So we move into the next part of the day. And we're going to kick off with a youth lead this morning. And we're joined by Hande, the president of the European FEMYSO, the Federation of European Muslim Youth Organizations. And Hande is the member of the Rising Youth Council. She has an impressive resume at the Council of Europe. She leads on the Portfolio of Management Committee with Ukraine. She co-leads on the Portfolio on Management Committee with Russia and in the EU's Council of Europe Youth Partnership. And before Hande does join the stage, we will be playing a short video.
In a panel on fighting discrimination, in a panel on fighting for equal rights, in a panel for fighting for minorities, why do you think that I chose to close this panel with the message of empathy, empathy, and empathy? In a room full of people who actually hate Muslims, who have a sincere hatred for Islam, why do you think that I chose this? So there was a specific group of people funded by the far-right delegation, by members of the European Parliament. Why do you think that I chose to close this panel like that? So this panel is on the pursuit of justice, right? And we've talked about justice a lot. We've talked about justice, adala, adalet, rechtvaardigheid in my own Dutch language, gerechtigheid in German, justice in French, right? There are so many different words linguistically also that look at justice. We've talked about it, but what does it actually mean? So I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not going to discuss what justice means, but I'll be rather talking about my journey for what I chose for myself to be the pursuit of justice. So as a fellow young person on stage, sharing my own experiences to you, fellow young people in the room. My story is with FEMYSO, the Forum of European Muslim Youth and Student Organizations. FEMYSO's story is of 26 years. It was set up 26 years ago after a conference in Sweden funded by the Swedish Foreign Ministry on the future of Islam in Europe. What shall we do about it? There, a specific gap was identified about connecting young Muslims from different European countries. So FEMYSO was set up back then, and since then, we've grown into a network of 33 member organizations across 21 European countries. We have member organizations from the UK, Italy, France, Gibraltar, Norway, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Ukraine, Bosnia and Albania. And we are here mainly to do two things: to connect these young or Muslim youth and student organizations, and to represent young Muslims at the European institutions, with the European Parliament, with the European Commission, with the Council of Europe. So my cause throughout my journey in FEMYSO is really to actually serve and represent young Muslims, trying to make sure that their rights and voice are owned by us, reclaimed by us, and also created by us. It's not only about reclaiming your narrative in Europe anymore. It's also about actually creating your own narrative, making sure that you own your own story. You make sure that you tell who you are. You make sure that your own rights are protected. In a context which is growing more and more hostile towards Muslims, unfortunately, in a context which is growing more and more towards Islam specifically, and in a context which is institutionalizing the exclusion of minorities and of marginalized youth specifically, more and more. So specifically about this event, about which you saw the video, what happened there? What is it? So the European Youth Event is a European Parliament organized fantastic event taking place every 2 years at the European Parliament. We as FEMYSO, since the origins of this event, we always take a delegation of at least like 50, 60 young people. And there are some people in this room who actually, you might have seen in the video, who were with us those 2 days in Strasbourg in France. But unfortunately, throughout the event, we all wore these FEMYSO hoodies and FEMYSO t-shirts, where you can see we are FEMYSO, we are Muslim. As Linda Sarsour said yesterday, we are unapologetically Muslim, we are unapologetically European Muslim. And with those identifiable T-shirts and you know, those hoodies, walking around with other young people. A lot of people actually really loved it. I had a lot of colleagues from other organizations who came to us and who were really excited about FEMYSO being there. But unfortunately, because it's the European Parliament, because it's a democracy, you have all voices represented. And the European Parliament, basically, to go to this specific event, you can get funded by members of the European Parliament. And unfortunately, there were also groups who have a specific agenda of undermining Muslims. And we were targeted there. We were actually there on the streets of Strasbourg in the European Parliament. We were targeted as Muslims, and my colleague Hiba on the right actually gave a speech about it, which you can still watch online. So this is the context which we are in Europe, unfortunately. But I have a couple of messages to share with you to make sure to basically, you know, just share one of my experiences, share some of the messages that we have as FEMISO, as a 26-year existing organization, to be able to basically manage this, you know, this world full of injustices. So I will be first talking about the societal level. When we structure our activism, when we structure our pursuit of justice, or however you want to call it, I've chosen to basically deliver my message according to 3 levels: the societal level, community level, and individual level, to help structure our thinking. Because when we think about all of these causes, right, when we think about, we've talked about different issues already, and when we talk about issues of justice like what's happening in Palestine, in Kashmir, in different countries, right? In Bosnia still, the situation is growing so much worse. How can we basically try to structure our thinking, and how can we, as young people who want to do something, right? A lot of you, I'm sure, have a lot of energy to do something. How can we structure our thinking? Because I think that's one of the things that might hold us back to actually become active and to do some things. I'm looking at the time at the same time, by the way. Practice empathy. Try to build bridges, but never let go of your values. Never let go of your ideals. Never let go of your vision of who you actually want to be, what you want to serve, what your ultimate purpose and objectives are. Empathy is really critical because we are living in such a diverse world. And as I said, in democracies, everyone has the right to express their opinions. But make sure that you actually, for some moment, take a moment and are able to put yourself in the feet of other people. Give your thoughts a pause sometimes and try to understand where people might be coming from. But also build bridges. Use the skill to build bridges and try to actually, connect your world to those of others. And be fierce in your values. Never let go. Always be unapologetically Muslim. Always have your identity at the forefront of your activism. So one of the examples that Zamzam actually mentioned is that my membership at the Advisory Council on Youth, which is a part of the Council of Europe, which has a co-management system on for young people to co-decide on youth policies and youth priorities in the Council of Europe region, which actually includes Turkey, but also countries like Azerbaijan and Georgia. So I was a member there, and I was able to actually work with a lot of young people from different countries and different organizations to work specifically for the purpose of youth rights and youth policies. Claim your rights, create your voice, and own your narrative. This is incredibly important. As young Muslims living in the West or in Europe in general, it's incredibly important that you never let the narrative define you. You always make sure that you own your narrative. You also, in times where your story is not told, you make sure that you actually create your voice and you claim your rights. One example is of the European elections. So I can only see a very dark room, but I'll continue just for the sake of time. So one example is of the European elections in 2019, an example of, claiming your rights, owning your narrative, creating your voice, where we were able to create a big campaign in Europe to make sure to encourage young people to go and vote, to use their voting rights. And this is just an example of building those bridges, making sure that you actually are part of wider institutions and you're part of wider initiatives to be able to make sure that you are there as a young Muslim for us in Europe.